everyone. This is another conversation, Freedom to Feel episode with Dr. ParulDuaMakkar. And I will introduce her briefly, but then I always, as you know, I always ask my guests to introduce themselves with their own words. So, Dr. Parul is a dentist, the owner of PDM Family Dental in Long Island, New York, and the author of Life Interrupted by her, Dr. Dua's Survival Guide. So, this is my brief introduction, but in your own words, who is Parul?
Thank you for, first of all, having me here. Thank you, Valeria. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Um, so, just for your listeners, I am just like many of you. I am a dentist by profession. I'm also a mom, a wife, sister, daughter, who play many roles in life, and a business owner. And I went through an adversary episode with losing my younger and only brother to cancer, to oral cancer,
Yeah.
and he was almost 8 years younger than me. So I remember the day we brought him home from the hospital, and I
Yeah.
remember the day him leaving the hospital and be taken to the morgue and finalizing his funeral. And he died. He was a dentist like myself. He followed my footsteps, and dentistry united us because of our age gap. We were so far apart. And so I'm a sister in grieving and who has learned how to navigate grief during the time of COVID, where, you know, unfortunately, COVID stole a lot of opportunities of human connections and emotional connections of having somebody close by. So,
Okay.
so I'm somebody who's muddled through it and trying to rise from what life doesn't go the way you want it to.
Right. And that's one of my biggest question throughout this experience is what is this all about and what's the purpose of being here? And now it's still that journey in a sense of clarity or going deeper into it to understand what this is. But before I get deeper into it, asking you more questions and making comments, I wanted to ask you a few other questions. What inspired you to become a dentist, Parul?
I think I always wanted to be in the medical field. I think the act of helping others and dentistry provided not only sometimes an instant gratification when somebody's in pain and you get them out of pain, you fix a tooth, you smile better, improve self confidence, but it also created a environment where I could have a family. I'm not on call. I'm able to balance. I have young children, so I'm in their lives. I'm not missing out because I have to go to work. I can dictate my own schedule. So
Right.
it gives me that flexibility, as well as providing a job where I am helping others, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that is interesting you said that about helping others. The flexibility in life is very important, and the idea of time can get in the way, of course, and then we try
Mhm.
to kind of juggle all this. But this concept of helping others, often when I ask the question about the purpose of the human experience, I get this answer: is to help the other, is to help one another. And I always wonder why. Why do you think we have this deep desire to help one another?
You know, I believe it's what you put out in the universe, especially after this, adverse reaction in my life or this event in my life.
Yeah.
I've understood the power of the magic of the universe. And I've gotten help. And not just when, because I got chosen into dentistry or why I decided. It's just throughout life, whenever I've been in a tough spot or I've needed help, I've asked. Um, and I've gotten it, and I've gotten it from the universe. And so if I've been helped, if I can help somebody else, it's just paying it forward. And it's also the energy that you radiate. If you've gotten help, you feel that positive vibe. And when you exude it, it attracts more positive
Mm.
vibes. And, we're not only the five senses that we see, there is more to what we can't see. And I think that's where this help comes in, that I've gotten unasked help in my times of despair. And hopefully I can be there for somebody who needs it one day.
Yeah, and you are doing exactly that with the book that you published, your brother's life, reporting that. It stopped me. So I'm just wondering how many people will kind of stop and reflect more the depth of what this is. So I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that this book it's actually a series of blogs that my brother wrote while he was facing cancer, and he knew his life was, limited, and he didn't ever baffle or ever question the cards that life had dealt him with. He accepted it and he acknowledged it and he faced them. So the book is actually his writings. I helped compile it posthumously, and I
Yeah,
wrote the foreword and the epilogue. The aftermath of what happens when a patient who has cancer leaves. The effects
yeah.
are felt.
Wow. What was the most challenging aspect of writing or putting this book together, Parul?
So Manu wanted to be published. I knew that. So this was his wish. I
Yeah,
got a publisher. It was fine tuning and making sure it would, live up to his expectations because he wasn't alive to see this book.
yeah,
And it was also writing about it, like the epilogue. I just write about how we've navigated life as a family in different parts of the world, and we became who we became, why we became,
right.
and you know, and, just writing it and just putting it in paper. It was a form of grieving, but
Yeah,
it was also this pain, of like, was this an alternate life I lived in some other world, or did this really happen and it's not a story that I'm writing about? So it's that
mm,
um, lived trauma once I was writing through it, and that was challenging, and making sure, that it would live up to his expectations and my parents' expectations, because
right,
life did not turn out the way they had expected it, and now I'm creating this manuscript, and that they would be proud of it, that they would feel like their family's been honored.
right. Yeah, and it really feels that way too. It's very tender. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom, timeless wisdom here that I'll be mentioning in a moment. Another a comment that you made just a few seconds ago or a minute ago that caught my attention is the universe. So you speak of being helped by the universe. Is that the same as God for some of us, or consciousness, infinite wisdom? Would that be the same?
I can only answer for myself. I think our God died the day Manu died. And, we were God fearing people. It is very hard for me to enter a um, house of God. So we're Hindus by
Yeah,
birth, and we go to the temple. But ever since Manu's death, I will not sit in a temple. I cannot enter. I cannot listen to prayers because I have felt the ultimate betrayal. And it's grief has been like our constant friend, because my dad lost his dad really young as an only child, and then he lost his mother to cancer, um, 30 odd years ago, and he lost his living parent that he knew, and then he watched his only son die of the same disease in a
right.
different part of the world, in Canada, where you expect the services and the treatment would have been better, and
Yeah.
they struggled their entire lives. And my mother lost both her parents and my brother within the same year. So
Wow.
grief has been our constant companion. So that, and as being God fearing, and my paternal grandmother was very religious. Both my grandmothers were very religious, and religion has been a big factor. That sense of religion is no longer, feels viable after a tragedy, and watching, in the worst of times, in the middle of COVID, where I couldn't travel because I live in the US, he's in Canada, borders were shut down. You
Yeah.
need PCR testing, getting to the funeral, like everything was just, it's
Yeah.
just an out of body experience. So
Mm,
for me, the answer has been in really the universe and people coming and helping, and and it's listening to Manu
yeah.
talking to me from the
Yeah.
beyond, with sending signs, and and I've seen these signs and I've acknowledged them, and it's different. It's so that's how I sense it as more of a spiritual uh, and a universe sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an experience, a more tangible experience. If you don't mind me ask, what was or is your idea of God?
Um, it's what we've been taught. I think that sense of different forms of God, but one person. That's kind of how we've been
Yeah.
trained. But you would think God would be merciful and kind, and we all know this world is not the most kindest place. And tragedies happen beyond our control, and we think of life's unfairness. You think some people have gotten everything they've wanted just because of the way they were where they were born, or just life, they've been so lucky there. And then there's people who, and Manu talked about it in his book, how he considered himself unlucky about having
Yeah.
overcome certain situations. So
Yeah.
life isn't fair, and so you would think God would be fair, and but then that would think I think that would throw off the balance of the universe if everything is good. You kind of have, I want the yin and the yang. So I don't know, my sense of God, it's the one that I've been raised with, and now I feel a little differently. Just maybe as a child who's mad at the parent for being
Yeah.
punished, but I don't understand what the punishment was for.
Ah,
So
interesting.
that's why the betrayal.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight, right? Not understanding where the punishment's coming from.
Yeah, it's
Right.
like, what did
Mm,
we do? And um,
right.
did we didn't harm anybody? We didn't do anything. We lived
Right.
a very conservative, worked hard
Yeah.
uh, as an immigrant family, and educated, and
Yeah.
just trying to live for the better. And for my parents to claim their fruits of labor, enjoy grandkids, not cremating their son. That's just against law
Yeah.
of nature.
I'm sure you heard about it, or have you contemplated the concept, the idea of karma? I know that this is a lot of times we come up with these ideas to give excuse or kind of explain everything that happens, but the on, the only one that kind of makes sense to me as of now, for all the suffering that I've been through myself and I see in others, is this concept of karma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you. Do you actually gave some thought to it, or you dismissed completely?
No, karma, I think, being Hindus, we believe in the reincarnation,
Yeah.
that we did something good in a life, and that's why you reap the benefit in the next life, and vice versa. And so, we always think, what did we do? Maybe we did something bad in our last life that we're paying for it now. Maybe, I definitely do believe in karma. And I've also been told, I've had to do my own sense of healing, and, getting a psychiatrist, doing medium readings.
Yeah.
And I've been told that Manu was here to pay a debt in his old life, and he paid that debt in this life to me, and giving me this manuscript. He only told me about it.
Right.
I mean, my parents knew he was writing, but he told me that he wanted to be published,
Right.
and so it's that, definitely that sense of karma. It's unexplainable. Maybe one day I'll have the answers when I see him
Yes.
again. But Manu, and I do believe in the essence of souls. That this energy, that when Manu died, when I saw his body, that was the first time I saw any body of my own family member, because I was never around for my grandparents. It was a different country. But when I saw
Right.
Manu's body, that wasn't him anymore. That
Mm,
essence of what made Manu
mm,
was no
mm,
longer there. It was just a stranger lying in a casket.
mm.
And so that sense of what
Right.
defines the soul, the consciousness, whatever, that the thinking, all of that just vanished. And it didn't really vanish anywhere. It's still out there.
Right. Right.
And Manu was an old soul. I mean, in his writings, you feel that
Yeah.
sense of wisdom that a normal 30 4-year-old doesn't, doesn't have. So I really felt he was an old soul, and it was his time. Um, and to go into a higher level, he may have been young in human years, but I think as soul, he was an old soul.
Right. That's profound. What you experienced in your own awareness, that you saw the body, but that you knew that that was not him. No, this is not. Yeah, he's not here anymore. The Manu that you know him to be was not there. So that it really resonates true to me as a knowledge, a spiritual knowledge, that we see all these things, but that's not really what we are. It's we are beyond all this. And yes, we keep returning here because the identification with this reality. That's my major question. Like, how do we stop this from happening? How can we not come back here again? Or perhaps yes, but with this higher understanding of who we are, and then we live these happier lives. And that's the Hindu philosophy, that Advaita Vedanta. That's my anchor. I mean, I just love that. I'm not sure you're familiar with it. We talked briefly off record, but I won't go deep too much into it. That really shows us clearly the logic of all this, of this reality. Not that it's not for all of us, because some of us are not there yet to
Right,
understand those things, right? But
right.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, another question, open question for you, Parul, is did you set an intention when you published Manu's book? What is the main purpose of this book to be out there?
There are many factors. Besides being a dentist and raising awareness for oral cancer, advocating for your bodies, knowing your signs and symptoms, because Manu's diagnosis was late. It was also, Manu wrote these beautiful words. And I read them after his death. I walked into his house, I opened his computer, and I had this sense of like everything is still there. He went in a rush to the hospital, so his blanket was still there, food still there to be eaten, his
Yeah,
medication by the bed, that, Manu's dog still there waiting for him. So
yeah,
everything of
yeah,
Manu's was still there, but just him, he was missing. It was his life interrupted. That's where the title of the book comes from. And he
right,
called it his survival guide, these writings. It's a way of outlet. So I
yeah,
wanted to honor him because he didn't have any children. Um, there's no other little Manus I would see, or in any other form. You
yeah,
know, he with him died a lot of possibilities and a possibility of a future. And so I wanted to pay a tribute to him, that Manu was more than the cancer that took him, that cancer should not be the one defining who he was. He was this brilliant person that the world had yet to see what he had to offer. And he had so much to give, and he was kind and full of life and joy and smart and just
yeah,
accomplished young man. And there was nobody else to witness it. And so this book was a testament to the love of our parents, what they've sacrificed, and how money was more than what cancer was,
yeah.
and how he was stolen.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I every time I talk to anyone here about losing people they love, I never had the experience, so I don't know what that is really at a visceral level. But I do have a lot of empathy, so I can feel those feelings. They are very powerful, but of course, they are not even close to what you felt and people who have been through this.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry for you going through you and your family going through this. I'm almost like lost for words because my husband also lost his sister, and I see to this day has been I think 20 years, and I see in his eyes the sadness and the grief. It's still here. It never left him. It's changed him forever. It's
It
incredible.
changes you forever. And grief
Right.
becomes this burden that you carry every day. Some days it's heavier than others. And,
Mm,
some days I'll feel it like a tsunami and it'll take my breath away and I'll just feel this rush of emotions. And
yeah,
some days it's silent tears and sometimes it's just these happy memories that I'm glad I had. I got the
yeah,
joy. Now I'm an only child. And
right.
and I'm sorry for the loss your husband went through. It's a very
Yeah.
unique loss, losing a sibling.
Right.
I think parents, you're taught, you know that it's going to happen. They're older than you, your grandparents, and but a sibling is someone you share your life with, somebody who walks alongside you, somebody you hope is there to help you when your parents cross over. And you don't expect to be sitting at your sibling's funeral at a shorter
Right.
span of life. So it's a very unique uh, grief, and it's tough.
Yeah, it really feels like listening to you now and to my husband and so many people I talk to. I can, yeah, yes. A question that comes to me is about Maya, and that's his dog. Where is she? I'm curious to
So,
know.
of course, Maya is very special. He got her when he was just a little baby, and she was taken in by his palliative nurse the day Manu went into hospice.
Yes.
And the palliative nurse said, my parents were like, we don't know what to do with Maya. And I was stuck in limbo in Canada, sorry, in the US, trying to get my PCR. So she took her in, and then she later adopted her. And now she's named Piper, and she's in a beautiful home with other pets and two loving kids and, full family. So she is very well loved, and she comes and visits us. I got to see her the last time I was in Canada. She'll come and meet, and it's very interesting. Manu loved Maya. I mean, from the book he talks about
Yes. Yeah.
unconditional love, and
Yeah.
I passed in the evening around 8, 9 o'clock, and his nurse, she said that around 10 p.m. the day that Manu passed away, Maya was almost like crying and like she was shivering, and she had to hold Maya
Uh,
because she was in distress. And
mm.
I always wonder if Manu on his way out paid Maya a visit.
Right. Yeah. I would say so. Yeah. That's those energies, subtle energies that we call soul, right? That stays
Yeah.
here, never leaves. Right. That makes sense to me. You have children, my Peru.
Like,
Yeah. How did you communicate this happening, Manu's death to them?
well, they were a little bit younger at that time, young enough to understand that death had happened, but not to comprehend the magnitude of the loss.
Yeah.
So, because we lived apart, and Manu we would spend summers, not Manu wasn't in an everyday life. He was every few months kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so they understood that he's no longer there. My kids were not with me when Manu passed away. He didn't come. They didn't come for the funeral. They didn't see anything, but
Right.
they were there for the ashes to disperse.
Right.
And my kids, while Manu was sick, I was very open and honest with my conversations. I said, this is what's happening. Mamu is going to, we call Mamu means mother's brother. He's going to pass. He's really sick, and Mamu's going to be sad. And sometimes they've seen me cry, they've seen me break down. We've tried to meditate, and I will start to cry because I feel these emotions in my and so,
Yeah.
and I've told him it's okay to cry and express grief. And some days mom's sad, it's okay. I will work through it, but it's okay to feel. So allowing them to express. And I remember the day Manu died, we got a gift, and it was a little bench, and we hadn't placed it outside yet. It was inside the house, and my younger son put a picture of Manu by the bench, and he put a pillow and a blanket, and he's like, I'm going to lie down with him right now. And I lie down, and I lay down next to him, cuddle him. He's like, Mom, you're squishing Mamu. You can't be with me. I'm lying down. So they express grief in their own way. To my older son, I told him when we dispersed ashes, I said, you know, this is life. It's a circle. It's ups and downs, and life and death, and you just learned the lesson a little much earlier than others. So it's
Yeah.
just the flow of life, and
Right.
acknowledge it, and and live it and feel it.
Yeah, right. And honor it as you are doing it now. It's truly beautiful. Thank you, Pearl.
Hmm.
So I have made a lot of notes here about messages in the book, anything that caught my attention,
Uh-huh.
and so much of it caught my attention. Everything has just touched me, but there's something that he says about this is about interrupted thoughts on suffering.
Hmm.
He says something very interesting. He says, he writes, the harsh reality of life is that the real world is cruel beyond imagination. And whatever silly fables society may have instilled within us to create some false illusion of safety is completely fabricated. So that caught my attention because of the that really, I have to say, true um, reality from our experience that this is suffering. And then we kind of have to look into what he's speaking of here, which is society and people around us trying to create the sense of safety, a sense of fulfillment and happiness that we can do this. But in the end, it will lose everything. It actually, in reality, really, every time we go to bed to sleep, we leave everything behind because we
Yeah.
don't know if we're going to wake up or not. And then even deep sleep shows that too. We
Mhm.
are just not aware of anything. We don't know the children we have, like in your case, parents, and then the life that we have been planning and we are so engaged in our waking life. We just leave everything behind every night.
Mhm.
So that's a very powerful and deep observation that we try to cover reality. And what is your thoughts about this, Pearl?
You know, reality can change any minute.
Yeah,
I mean, you could step off the curb and be hit by a car, be disabled, or worse,
right.
die. Tomorrow's not promised to anyone. And so we create this, yeah, he's right. We create this false sense of reality or the life we're living in. We try to do the best we can with what we know. And we create safe environments for our children. But we all know that we're protecting them from the world outside. We create this safety bubble with known people, known family, known friends, and we try to do the best with good around us, um, because there is so much suffering. Because, and sometimes it's by no fault of our own, right? Like, I'm not going to bring politics in, but let's just take an example of Ukraine, that nobody did anything wrong and they were attacked, right? Like, in the sense, life can change, or there's a tornado, or a hurricane, and lives are destroyed by no fault of their own. So we're always trying to live our best and create this sense of, yeah, in a protective bubble, trying to keep our family and our friends and our close ones safe. But we don't know what life will bring, what tomorrow will bring.
Yeah. And even the experience with COVID showed that to us clearly. Gosh, like, what is this that's happening?
Right.
Um, so, what are we to learn from all this? Like, when I read this that Manu wrote, that kind of stopped me in that sense of even going deeper into the knowledge that I'm already very much engaged with, which is that the deeper understanding of this, which in the end we don't really get to experience because it's not an experience. It's just the sense of knowing, like there's something behind beyond this, that there's something that's called karma, that might be the effects of karma, and but we don't understand. And then the question always arises, like, why, I mean, if we have done all these bad things in different lifetimes, it would be fair for us to remember. So we would,
Yeah, we don't.
right? We could do something about it, this one. But
Right?
we
We
don't.
get bored of the juju. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, but then we can also say that's why there is spirituality, right? That it shows us kind of, it teaches us that it is there. And then he also talks about hope in the very beginning of the book. This is an interesting message about hope in life. He writes, "To lose hope in life is to lose the meaning of life, for it is the spiritual fuel that guides us in this difficult world."
Yeah.
So the idea of hope, I call it trust. Like I tend to trust everything instead of hoping for something.
I heard that in a podcast that you call it trust. Yes.
Yeah, oh, I did. Yeah, right. There's something about hope, but that's almost like expecting something good to happen, and I try not to do that because it could not. Who knows? It might not happen.
And he
So
talks about that, this dismal sense of like, no, it did not become a reality, but I'll trust, like you said, I'll trust
yes,
that it will happen if I keep doing it, right?
yes, right. Do you actually? Does it make sense to you, Pearl? That idea, hope and trust and faith. Some people use faith too.
Right. Faith, I think they all go interchangeably. Whether you, it also depends on where you're coming from, right? If you are
Yeah.
a stout believer in the sense of God and the supreme power, so yeah, you place all your faith and you say, if I put all my faith in God and I'll just see how things will unfold. You can do it on hope and realization that life kind of, I'm doomed, what Manu felt, but I'm
Yeah.
just going to keep still hoping for a better turnout. He knew that cancer is not going to cure himself, and he knew it's not going to look any different, but just that the pain and the suffering would be not as much on, from today to tomorrow. And you trust, like, then that creates a more sense of positive, like, I really trust this to happen, and it exudes a more sense of affirmative action of what tomorrow will bring. I trust that tomorrow I'm going to wake up in my bed and
Yes.
go to work and continue my daily chores. So yeah, so
Mm.
it just depends on how life has been to you and what you're coming at with. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. We have different perspectives and it might change. Who knows, right? Life's constantly changing. So who knows? It might change that opinion too, or that outlook about life. It came to me that I read that about you. You also host a podcast. Talk to me for a moment about that. Is that about the book, Life Interrupted?
Yes, it's about the book. The podcast is a limited series. It's only a few episodes. And in that podcast, I interviewed Manu's closest friends who are all in the medical field. So they're either specialist dentists or they are doctors. Some of the doctors are like ER doctors, intensive care units, people who deal with death on a day-to-day basis. And I talked to, and these are Manu's inner circle who've seen him in his last days when I wasn't able to be around. Um, and I've been there for him. And it's just talking to them about Manu, the book, how they felt. Because Manu died when we were in time of COVID. We were only allowed 20 people in the funeral home. It was through Zoom. So
Yeah.
that natural feeling of grieving collectively to mourn a person wasn't there. And I think that's a chance COVID stole from us. And we did a celebration of life, but a lot of people weren't able to come because we did it in December in Calgary and it was frigid cold. And again, COVID restrictions were still kind of um, limiting. But so this was just for the inner circle to express a grief, unfinished conversations, unexpressed love, a chance to just mourn and heal, and a chance I got because living apart, I didn't have any family near me, like my core family and my parents. I don't have any other siblings. My cousins live in different parts of the world. My grandparents are all deceased. So who knew? And all because we lived in different parts of the world, my closest friends are spread across the world. So I didn't have that collective village to help me mourn. And so I had to help create this village. So I talk about, in the last episode, I talk about how I felt about grief and the power of the universe and how it has come and spoken to me, and just a way to let out this emotions.
Right. That sounds like another beautiful way to honor him and you, of course, as the sister. And the question that comes to me is, did you learn anything new about Manu by hosting that podcast, those
Yeah,
conversations?
yeah, of course. I learned all the inner nuances of, friendship, right? I was like a second mom. I learned these little stories, the stories from friends, like, oh, the silly things that they did, the talk would have. I was devoid of those conversations. So
And,
far away, and I was dealing, I remember different life patterns because I had kids and I had young kids and I was busy with that. And he was single. He had built his own practice. He was in a different life um, pattern. So, and yes, dentistry united us, but we nothing else really connecting us. And so this kind of brought that connection and brought me closer to him because I got to listen to those parts that I didn't know.
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I'm kind of laughing here, just trying to going with that flow with you because I can sense that energy, right? Not
Right.
knowing certain things about him.
Yeah.
That made you laugh. There's so much. I have to go back to some of the. He talks about failure quite a lot in the book too.
Yes.
That one of the biggest messages. You're not your failures, and your misfortune should not ever define you. Basically, that the hardships that we go through, it's not who we are, so we should not
Yes.
be defined by them, as you mentioned earlier too.
Yes.
Is that your own outlook on failure as well, Pearl?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many times where like, oh, man, I tried it just didn't work. And you kind of give up. Sometimes you give up on your dreams. And it's learning that let it not define you. We all fail, right? I
Yeah,
mean, we wouldn't know how to walk if we didn't keep getting up every time we fell when we were starting
right.
to learn. So it's the same thing with everything. Nothing will come to us. Some people are naturally gifted, but others have to work hard.
Right.
Um, and you know what situation you're in too. Life, what opportunities you have. Not everybody's given the same. So you keep trying, you keep pushing forward, you keep inspiring, and you keep getting up. It's when you
Mm,
don't get up, that's when you fail. It's when you
yeah,
learn from them and not repeat those mistakes, right? He talks
yeah,
about that.
yes.
And learning from those mistakes and getting up.
Yeah, that's exactly what most of us do, and that kind of uh, made me reflect about this resilience, this human resilience. So many humans go through incredible challenges, and they are always coming up. Not always; some of them give up, of course, but there's so many of us who not just survive but thrive, and
Mhm.
then we learn these deep lessons, and then we go on to inspiring and pass those wisdom on to others. It's just remarkable. We have to kind of look into the human soul, that spirit that we talked earlier. It got to be something, it has to be coming from that place. And then also what came to me by reading the book is that at some point we need to ask how we can end this. How can we end this cycle of suffering, which is my journey? Where I'm at now. How can we end this? And then the answers we find, the deeper we go into it, is that, if I may say it, this never was really. This is just a dream. So then that never really happened. I know it feels like it's so real, but it's not really.
Yeah,
Uh,
it could all be just a dream. And we
right,
woke up one day and it
right,
was a dream and it never
yeah,
happened. Yeah.
right,
There is no end to suffering. I think that makes us human. And I think if we are not suffering or learning or growing or reach this power, the supreme essence of nirvana, right? Like now we have attained that total peace and total. And Manu had to suffer, or he felt he needed to suffer through life to gain the kind of wisdom that he had. It didn't just magically come to him. He went faced death many times. He stared it in its face. He knew it was this age old friend that he had, and one day it's going to take him. So, and he suffered, and he knew that all these accolades that it is, that we go chasing, he talks about chasing trophies, that in the end, it's nothing. It was just yours for the borrowing, and you
yeah,
used it in this, and you're gone, and nothing else
mm,
really matters, and what I've learned is two things. One, the most precious commodity that we've had is time. And
mm,
I can't replace it. I can't bring back Manu. I can't replace the time. I can't rewind. I can't buy it. I can't return it. And
yeah,
this
yeah,
essence of time that what we have in this present moment, to enjoy it because you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, right?
Right.
And and what and chasing what really matters. Yes, it's money, success. Success is not truly money. It's how you define it, whether it's having a healthy life, um, and with loved ones. You could be, it's just the way you define it. For some, success is having all those things and being alone, and they're perfectly happy with that. And there's no right or wrong answer.
Right. Right.
Letting not others' definition define it, letting
Yeah.
you figure out what success is to you and what matters to you.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, are you going to be happy the way you
Mm.
lived?
Right. That's a
With,
beautiful message.
yeah,
Yeah.
with regrets.
Right. Defining success ourselves. We no regrets, right, Pearl? No regrets. That's a powerful one. Do you regret anything as of today?
Yeah, it was just the time, the circumstance that I could not save my brother. I was
Yeah.
not there to help him during his surgeries. He had two. We had a major surgery. I was not there to help my parents at the time of need. Um, and that was because of COVID, borders shut. He was immunocompromised. I was not vaccinated. The world was in a turmoil. Um, so I could not do those things that I should have been able to do had it been different circumstances. I would have been there. So I do regret not being. I am grateful that I was able to say goodbye to him on a WhatsApp call just like this.
Yeah.
I could see him in his moments of life, like the last moments. I was there to say the final goodbye and carry out the rituals. And I know a lot of people did not have that opportunity during COVID. Um, so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for him being here. But that's a regret. And I think with the book comes, grieving, yes, and a lot of healing that, in his entire life, I could not be there for a lot of his things. I was in college when he was a teenager. I got married when he got into dental school. So I wasn't there for him in life when he needed me. And I wasn't there in his death. But I could help bring to the world what he had written and not it be in some laptop in a stored device
Mm.
that
Yeah.
bring it out into the world. So I'm grateful that I was able to do that and bring it this his message and share it. So
Right.
yeah.
So in a way, it's not a regret anymore because you have done what you're here to do, which is to me it really feels like a purpose. What you have done. When I got the information about you, I was reading about it. I was wondering like, oh, what is this? Not It's not a book about her. So why would she publish a book that's not about her? Because most of us do that. We write books about ourselves and what we believe in and all those things. But you published a book that has nothing to do with you, but with your brother. So that's a selfless act, which is very kind.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's beautiful though. So you have nothing to regret from my point of view because you did it. You're doing it now.
Thank you.
So I love the way he talks about animals. That's why I asked earlier about Maya, which has a different. She has a different name now, but he says animals serve as a gentle reminder to embrace that spirit and think beyond ourselves once in a while. As past our own limitations, there is beauty.
Mm.
That's truly beautiful. Past our own limitations, there is beauty. That is so true. And animals, I have a pet, I have a dog, Zen, his name is, has to do.
Love the name. Love it.
Yes, Zen is a Zen monk. Oh, and he's so amazing too. That's exactly what he brought into the house, that sense of peace.
Yes.
So, do
Then
you have, yeah, do you have animals too? Do you have one or two? Any animal? Or,
I do. I have two birds. We actually had a little bird that was there when Manu was suffering, and it was so symbolic that
uh,
every time Manu went to the hospital, he went twice to the hospital, like admitted, when it was critical, and the bird would flow away. And one time she came back, but the second time she flew away, she never
yeah,
came back, and we lost Manu. And but now we have two little birds that the kids love. And unfortunately, because of allergies, we would love to have a dog in the house, but I and one of my children are allergic to dogs.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons I couldn't bring Maya. We thought about it
Right.
uh, to adopt her, but um, yeah, it was a little too much.
Right. Oh, yeah, I know.
I love to have a dog. Yeah.
Yes. And well, I can imagine. My husband talks about that too. I love cats, but he said we can never have a cat because he's allergic to
Oh,
cats.
I know.
I love the way he talks about peace too. So I have so many notes here. We're almost at the end of the interview, and I have way, way too many. I wrote the whole book here pretty much.
I know,
Finding,
right?
oh my God, I'm finding internal peace. That's very powerful.
Mhm.
What is imperative is inner peace, strength, and truly believing that there will be a better life in this world or the next.
Mhm.
So, and he also, in a very profound way, he talks the way he found peace by going through everything that he went through.
Suffering.
Through suffering, right? And he said, in my most extreme states of discomfort, I found a place so beautiful, so calm, and
Mhm.
so serene that the most magical place was my mind. So was within him all that beauty, all that calm and serenity. That's very powerful, which
Yeah.
shows clearly that's here now. It's always here. So it's something that we don't often see because we focus on the suffering and we focus on discomfort, and we have a lot of the mind focuses on different things. But once we focus on that beauty within, then everything changes. I know it takes a lot of work because I have been
Takes a
doing
lot
that.
of work. Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of dedication involved, right? You have to be very dedicated, is the word.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it takes profound suffering to uncover that place. Isn't that amazing? It's just,
Yeah, it does. And that chapter, so the book is in the same order as he wrote it. So he talks with hope and he ends it with this last chapter on new beginnings. And
yeah,
his last line that you just read,
yeah,
imperative is inner peace and believing there's a better world,
yeah,
in a better life in this world or next. So he
right.
knew death was coming. And that's this
Yes,
last note.
yeah,
Um, so he accepted it, and he talks in those terms. He talks about souls, and even like he talked about finding inner peace and not through anything else. And one of the passages or he wrote was one of the paragraphs he wrote was, "Many have come before me, and many will come after me. My soul will remain eternal, as
yeah.
it will always be beautiful, and it was tragedy that made it so. And for that, I'm appreciative."
Mm,
Yeah, so he talks in those terms of peace and higher level and suffering and soul and moving on and better life in this or the next.
yeah,
So I think he had an insight to what lays ahead. We don't
right,
necessarily know it because we only can see what we want to see and what our eyes are showing us,
right,
what our
right,
senses are showing us.
right,
So it's this higher purpose or higher self that we get to feel these other emotions or these other guidance.
right.
Yeah.
When we turn our attention to it, a lot of times, like as you mentioned, we're just distracted and then just focus on what the eye can see, but there's so much beyond that.
Yes.
When we really turn within, and meditation is one of the most incredible practices to see that as an experience. Although I really feel like that peace, that place of serenity is not really an experience. We call serenity calm, but it's not really. It's calm itself, so it's not an experience. It's almost like it's so hard to explain, isn't it? It's almost like a fish realizing that it's in the water, but it has been there all along, but then
Well,
he never knew, right, that that was water. So that's really what we are. And then it's just kind of yeah, it resonates with me deeply, the book, because is a lot of times at the end of life that we see the truth. So it really feels like he saw it, right? You just mentioned, but I really feel like he knew that, like most of us do. Perhaps not most of us, I wish most of us knew, when we're about to
but
lose the body, we'd realize that and
yes.
see, oh, wait a minute, I never die.
Or anybody who's faced some sort of tragedy up close and personal, whether to, a bad accident or an illness or some life defining event or losing a loved one that you realize the fragility of life and how, unpromised it is, and
Yeah.
to be grateful for a new beginning each day, to start
Yeah.
afresh.
I
Yeah.
know. Thank you so much. It's so beautiful. I love the way you end the book too, because you write about him, and in the end, that made me cry. I actually read to my husband too, to my dearest. I would love for you to read that actually, in your own voice. Yeah, please. That the very last dedication.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
I know. I cried. It's beautiful.
To my
Yeah.
dearest Manu, then I carried you in my arms. Now I carry you in my heart. You are done fighting. Now rest, baby brother. Your fight may be over, but not your journey. You will continue to live through your words. And in my next life, may I be so privileged to call you my brother. Till we meet again, love Bibi, which means older sister.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. I know that made me cry before, and it's still the emotions. It's interesting because even when we kind of realize that we never die, that there's something about us that never dies, there's still this saying goodbye to the experience of what once was that we imagined to be us, like this,
And
right, that human form. It's
yeah,
very,
and watching the body, doing the cremation, all of that, was these acts we were going through. But it was the next day, that realization of, oh my God, there's, in Hindu we cremate, so we don't have a physical sense of body anymore. It's realizing that the body is gone and all we're left with are these, it's dust that we have to disperse going back into the earth. And then these memories, that's all that's left.
right.
There's nothing else that's tangible. It's just, that's why I take a bunch of photographs. I'm like, every
Yes,
photograph has memory attached to it and it keeps that alive. And one day I'll be gone. And, I hope there's something, that I leave tangible for my children and then the future generations to remember me with, because one day I'll be a footnote in their lives. Um, you know,
yeah,
the book continues and it's this circle, like sun's rising, world keeps going, things need to be done, and life keeps going on, but that person's gone. And when you realize how just you had him and now it's just this dust and it's dispersed and it's gone and his essence was gone a long time ago.
right.
And and then you're like, what are we doing? And that whole sense of spirituality and that sense of self and being comes to play. But it's when you have dealt with death and hugged it and felt it impact you that you realize how precious life is.
Right. That's another, yeah, another message in the book that's it's very evident and powerful that we don't value what we have until we lose them.
Yeah.
With that sense of loss, right? I really don't believe we lose anything. I had a dream of birds. So you just mentioned about the birds that you have. So in the dream I had, I never dream with birds. And then I had the birds, two birds. And then you mentioned two. I'm like, oh, what a
So funny.
coincidence, right? Which is not a coincidence to me. um,
No.
yeah, I do want to thank you again for doing what you do, what you have done and still doing, like going deeper into his legacy and honoring his life and his message. And I know he talks about the soul too, and he does mention life after death. And as you just read in that last note, you mentioned again meeting him again in the next life. So uh, that's not hope to me. That's just real in that
Like,
sense. Yeah, it is true. We keep coming back here, although this is not. It's not. It is real, but it's not. It's not all. It's not exactly what we think it is. That's. I want to leave it at that, and I want to also mention that I love your culture. It's something that I come from Brazil. That's a Catholic, and I studied pretty much all religions, and I tried because my path is spirituality. It's that, so I studied everything, and I went into everything. But then my stop now, it seems, will be for this lifetime, is Vedanta, which is a Hindu philosophy, religious philosophy that's very deep, and I have not as an attachment to that because I try not to practice not detachment but non-attachment. But
Yeah.
it's just this huge gratitude that arises when I think about the Hindu culture and the Indian culture. It's just that's 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 love for humanity. That's what it is. So I want to thank you. I know your ancestors; they they live through you. So I want to thank them and you too for bringing this treasure to our reality, to this to humanity.
Thank you.
I know this is a little bit far out because we didn't talk about Hinduism here and not the philosophy of Vedanta, but I have to say it. So
Thank
thank you. And before we say goodbye for today, what is one message, if there is one, you wish everyone who listens, watches this video, um, you wish them to take with them for the rest of their lives?
Live your best life possible because tomorrow is not guaranteed. So live for yourself.
Yes, he said that too.
Mm.
Live it, right? With no regrets, if possible, right, Peru? Thank you so much again. And what is the best way to, if somebody wants to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. I'm on Instagram at P like Peter, D like David, M like Mary, Family Dental. And the book is available on Amazon. And the podcast is anywhere you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Apple. So any way to reach me, but the best is, yeah, Instagram.
Wonderful. So I'll have the links. I do have them here. I'll have all those links on on your interview profile, and I'll have the link of the book directing people to Amazon. Thank you
Yeah.
so much again, and we'll talk
Thank
soon.
you. Thank you
Bye
so
for
much.
now.